and Institutions Committee. It is 4:15. We are back for the day. It is Thursday, January 30th. We're going to spend some time with BGS, with Joe Asia, again, the football player from way back.
A few years ago.
The awesome football player. And Joe has a handout. We also has a PowerPoint, and somebody's going to share the screen. But I wanted to bring the committee up to speed in terms of the damage that was done here in the Capitol complex with the flooding. We don't have anything in the Capitol bill that pertains to this, but there could be something that unfolds that we might have some decisions made by the time we finish up in April or May. And it's going to be really important for folks here to understand the depth of the damage that was done here in the Capitol complex. And there are four buildings that right now are not usable, that are empty, but there will have to be some decisions made on that going forward. So I just wanted to give an opportunity for members to see what occurred in the flood in 2023. All yours, Joe.
Thank you. Good afternoon. For the record, Joe Agia, Director of Design and Construction with Buildings and General Services. The flood of 23 was a 25-hour event of flooding in downtown Montpelier, specifically for us in the Capitol complex. It impacted over 19 buildings. One of those buildings is outside of the complex, 18 are inside. Some more greater depth of degree than others. So the one outside is what was the Liquor and Lottery office down on 13 Green Mountain Drive. So you're headed out towards the interstate. There's a turn right after the high school, that the Green Mountain Drive, and you go down to the end of that, and there's a office building sitting by the red warehouse. That building was impacted on the basement level. So showing here is a site plan of the Capitol complex. Along way down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see blue and green. These buildings are laid out with the green color. Were not impacted by the flood, whether there are buildings and or others. Then we get into yellow, which was minimally impacted. Blue was impacted onto the basement level only, and then the orangish tan colored ones hit the first floor.
So the tan ones went up to the first floor.
Correct. And so you see, so we actually have 5 buildings that are unoccupied right now. It's the 4 here in the complex. And then we have the one at 13 Green Mountain Drive.
What did you say the red was?
The red is, they were impacted the worst.
Okay. I'm sorry, green means.
They were not impacted. And the one on 112 State Street, in between the two buildings towards the bottom right, that is a condo. The state does own 2 floors in that building, 3rd and 4th floor, I believe, and we were not impacted.
For what?
Bank is there.
Oh, that's.
And they were dry flood proof. They had some leakage coming in around the gates that they had up, but otherwise, I think they were operable in a couple of days once they cleaned up their lobby. But that's a conduct. They take care of all of that. So the minimally impacted buildings were the 6 properties, and we had 118 State Street, which was a building behind 116, sort of nudged in between 116 and 120, DMV across the street. That was only impacted very lightly in the basement. 120 and 122. 120 is the prior motor vehicle building.
Yeah.
122 is the heat plant. They had some water in the basement. They have been dry flood proof. Lesson learned on that we found out was they do have sump pumps. Problem is, nobody cleans in the corners behind the equipment. Stuff gets in there. And so in the future, we got to plan for that. Better pumps. 2 and 4 Aiken were not flooded at all. However, their power is fed from 133 State Street.
So 2 acre is this green building,
Green, brown, and whatever.
whatever, your old building, and then 4 acre is
There's garage space beyond that down the drive where they can.
Oh.
Yeah, no, that's-
That's about where it stopped. So like Baldwin didn't really get it.
Baldwin, no, and again, the floodwaters did not impact that high up. If you
It came up,
came
how
up
far up?
about this level here across the state house lawn. And it was roughly in between the 100 and 500 year flood, but in downtown Montpelier, or in this area of Montpelier, it's very, difference in height is not that much. I'm not sure, it could be less than 6 inches.
And then everything else, as you go down to the river there, where you see all the parking lots and the yellow buildings and the blue, all of that was underwater.
Yes. And as you go from right to left, the deeper it got.
Right to left, so as you want
Sorry.
to come down to,
From Davis, 109 State Street, down to Bailey Avenue. Yes. Anything else on the map? Don't want to go. All right, and the other one is 6 Baldwin. 6 Baldwin did get a little bit of water in it because there's a tunnel that connects 133 to 6 Baldwin. And they took out some of the items for the elevator in the basement. In the elevator shaft, excuse me. Then we have basically the 3 other groups. The group 1 is on the south side of the State Street where the basements were impacted. We go to group 2. Those were the ones on the south side that were impacted above the basement on the first floor. And then group 3 was the north side, the ones that were impacted the most. Here we have a photo of the basement of 110 State Street. The photo on the left is basically as soon as we could get in there and get some photos. You can see the amount of sludge that was in the basement. It's about 48 inches of water in that building. Then on the right-hand side, the company that we contracted with, a Servpro, was in there, and this is where they've all cleaned it out, and we're just running fans and dehumidifiers to take out the moisture that was in the building.
mucky water. Muck.
116 State Street actually did quite well. The photo on the left is right as soon as we get in there. Except for 133, one little unique thing is as we were walking around July 11th, it was around, 8 o'clock at night, and we realized all the lights are still on in the buildings, even though they were flooded,
Dear. Oh,
all
boy.
the basements. So all the electricity was on and whatnot, and
Kaboom.
Green Mountain Power Trust going by, we flagged them down, had them pull the cutouts on the pole and turn the power for it until we get it all dried out. So that was quite interesting.
So 116, is that the auditors?
No, that is ag.
A tag. Okay.
And
Yeah. Did you fix that? Can you do that now? Shut the electric off differently?
No, oh, you gotta have GMP.
no, it's one of those odd things with water coming up and it's just so much of it. The current's not running through to pull the breakers. Pretty odd.
Yeah, funny.
That had to be so.
So on the left-hand side in this building, you can almost, if you look into the handrail on the bottom left is, you can see roughly where the water standing is. They only had, 30 inches of water in there. They did quite well. And then the right-hand side, again, Serpro comes through, takes out anything that could grow mold and can't be dried.
So they're ripping part of the wall down.
Yeah, all the wainscot went away.
You have to expose that. And has that been, none of that has been repaired, has it?
No, we have put stuff back in the basement of 116. They do have an accessible restroom. That we have put back. So there's certain things in certain buildings we have because what we did was to reoccupy them instead of leasing space.
And that's not gonna hurt our FEMA reimbursement, our FEMA, if we did something like that?
No.
Because if, for the committee, if we went in that picture on the right, if we went in and started putting the wainscoting back or the wall back, that might violate our FEMA amount.
Yes, and it comes under a different category and there's a whole bunch of FEMA stuff for it, but that's basically it. Plus everything that we do now, when we are putting back, is to be above the, what's known as a base flood elevation, what used to be known as the 100-year flood. But you're gonna be 2 feet above that. Or you're looking at other measures to dry flood proof, which is you want to keep everything dry, or wet flood proof, where you allow the water to come in and easily drain out after the flood.
Will, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a quick question on like FEMA stuff because,
Hold the shade.
uh, so you're saying that if we were to mess with this, it would impact how FEMA assesses it? Or I don't know exactly.
There are certain categories that they have and what you can put back. So if we put back and re-occupied it permanently, yes, they would pay for that and they're done. What we have done is we have reopened almost all of these buildings, except for 5,
Uh-huh.
to reuse them temporarily. The electrical has been cleaned. A lot of the large electrical has been cleaned and left in place. We are on a 90-day permit. We're still running on the extended 90-day permit.
Okay.
The 90
Fire safety is working with us on that, and we are starting to see some corrosion. But there's certain steps with FEMA you have to go through. You're documenting everything that was in there, and then you're then going to get a value that to replace it in kind. And then if you hit a certain level, substantially damaged, that's more than 50% of the assessed value, then you're going to bring the whole building up to code. So we're still in that process of documenting everything that was damaged with FEMA. Does it mean everything?
Yeah, because the reason I asked that was because when we had some previous conversations, it was mentioned that, you had to do the work in order for FEMA to reimburse you.
Yes.
And then it's kind of like, well, that's kind of a paradox. If you have to do the work, but then they're saying you can't do this work,
You
that's
do
why I was
the
just
work
trying to.
after
well,
it's
you can-
approved.
right.
Yeah, after it's, okay, so that's
Right, so
why I
you-
just wanted clarity, yeah.
So you do the investigation of what was damaged, then you get a price on that damage, and then they may reimburse you for that. But we have so much damage due to the complex, it'd be something like we did in Waterbury,
Mhm.
which is now known as 428. I have no idea what that stands for, but it's really what you're getting is mitigation, and you're looking at the whole complex together and what could you do? So otherwise you'd be, so when I get further on to some of the other buildings, I'll tell you about having to lift them up in the air or options like that. But those are the steps that we are working on right now with FEMA.
I'm gonna ask a real stupid question. So this has been in the works since 23 with FEMA.
Yes.
So with all the uncertainty that's happening on a national level and also wanting to look at FEMA and maybe redesign the whole thing, because we've started this in 23, been working with them through 24, is any of those monies would be in jeopardy if they change any of the
I have
makeup of
no idea.
FEMA?
That would be Doug Furnham. Be asking him. We're still plugging away just as it's coming.
Our experience is not to get way off on topic, but our experiences along with many other states' experiences with FEMA. I'm not saying what needs to be done with them, but it's not an efficient and effective system.
I'm not getting into it. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking if there's a halt to everything,
It's that scary.
is that gonna halt a work that we've been doing with them for 2 years, a year and a half? And monies that
Yeah.
we may not see, or we may see.
I have not asked that question of them.
Hopefully Doug will have more information for sure.
So next to, on the other side of the western side of 120 State Street is 126. And again, the basement flooded in there. You can see, how it looked with the lights on the left-hand side and then almost cleaned up on the right-hand side. So any of the pipe insulation, all of that had to come off. Once that was done, we were racing around in the end because again, compliments of my mechanical engineer. It was the steam's coming on in September. And so because it is under pressure, it's not 212. I don't know what the temperature is, but it's going to be very hot. And so we'd be losing a lot of heat in the basement without being insulated. Plus it would be dangerous to be working in the area. So we then were racing to get that all insulated. 128 State Street, Secretary of State's office. Here in the basement, you can see that there was a wall, sheetrock wall separating, and it is no longer, and now you can see the condensate pump, steam line overhead, and the wood 2x4s that are still there. Solid wood can be dried out. Green Mountain Drive, again, this was down in the basement. And you can see on the left-hand side, they had some office and a kitchenette and other meeting space in the basement. And then on the right-hand side, nicely opened up. They did a great job of cleaning. Then we get into group 2, down on the south side of State Street. And this impacted the first floor. So in this, it was 132, 134, 136, and 144 State Street. This building, 132, is the auditor. And you can see on the left-hand side, it doesn't look that bad. He only had about 13, 16 inches of water in there. But by the time we got crews in there, that water is wicking up through the plaster or the wood trim and all of that. So all that has come off. The wood trim we saved because of historic value. 132 also had back plaster. There was another layer of plaster that's towards the outside wall. That was for, insulation back in the day. All that too had to come.
So that building is not,
It's not occupied.
So
That's correct.
13 inches on the first floor.
Yes,
So the basement was
completely flooded. Yes.
Under water.
I mean, if I had a basement, it was a better way to ask it. It was, does it have a basement, but it was, okay.
Yes.
so you can see the walls have been ripped apart. Flooring has been torn up. You've got mechanics, you've got wiring, you got everything behind there that is just not usable.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tough. You gotta put it back that way. I mean, we had a. I was
We
involved
don't know what to do because we're in the flood plain.
in a flooded camp on McQuam and we put it back in T111, which is not historic, but the floods, it's gonna be fine.
Yes. Right, so 134 is the visitor center, and you can see all the stuff that they had. A lot of stuff you're seeing in the photo on the left was not owned by the state. They're actually vendors that were displaying their goods there. They were able to come in and get them. This had roughly 1.5 feet of water in there. And again, this also had 5 floors. I think it was pretty interesting when we were going through to be ripping up that over the years, they have just layered on another floor of this and another floor of that. So
That's pretty cool.
found some interesting things.
So the issue with this whole flooding is the water sat in these buildings for quite a while,
Yes.
2 weeks. I mean, it was a few days before you could get
109.
to work.
111 and 133, the ones on this side of the street were the worst because of the depths.
Yeah.
We couldn't pump them down fast enough,
Right?
only because the water table was so high.
Yeah.
So we could be pumping and it was just coming back through. Most of the buildings, 128 is concrete. But the other, and same as 110, these buildings here we're looking at is laid up stone foundation. So I think pretty good.
But also it was during the summer and it was hot
Yes.
and you got moisture in these buildings and you're pumping the water out, but
It's still very,
it all got in the sheetrock, it all got in the plaster and it just kind of sat there, seeped right in.
Which, I know we have a map somewhere other than this one that says, but which one's 134 across the street?
red building, small little red building diagonally crossed. 136, there's a Senator Leahy's
House.
house.
This is where the Arts Council.
This is where the Arts Council was. This had roughly almost 2 feet of water, I believe in it. So as you're headed down State Street, getting deeper and deeper. One of the things that did help one of these is the old homes that are built up on a stone foundation, so roughly 30 inches in above grade anyway. So that's a bonus to help with this. But again, the floors in here, the hardwood floors and all that were all stripped out.
We'd be over here.
Has a basement. Then back in late 80s, early 90s, we put an addition on the backside of this. Tore down the old garage. That was only a concrete slab on grade. So that wasn't that bad, but on the area that we're looking at here, the basement is dirt because of the ledge and it slopes and all that good stuff. So it wasn't that bad. They actually did clean off the silt at the dirt.
Really?
Yes. 144 State Street. This building does not have a basement. However, it had about 5 feet of water.
This is where the Green Mountain Care Board are.
That is correct. Everything in here, you can see on the right-hand side, was all the sheetrock on the movable partitions was gutted, and the day when we started walking around late afternoon on July 11th and going in here, we still couldn't get in this building because the water was just slowly seeping out. So the doors were bowed and you just couldn't open anything. So there were some fun things to it that I don't want to do again, but it was interesting. Then we get into the north side of State Street, and we're into 109 State Street. And this here is the shot of the auditorium on the left-hand side and the pavilion. Yeah, and on the right-hand side, you can see all the chairs, the carpet. See, the walls have been cleaned in this situation. You can see all the way back into where David Sheets stored his stuff.
There's no water inside, right?
No, that is silt on the carpet. Really, it was an orange carpet.
Yeah.
And so were the seats. And you can see, and in here, if you look, it's hard to see. You can see it on here. The water level is right about here. Oh, so that there is from flood
So it
water.
was almost all under.
Yes, the pavilion, yes, it is.
You new folks haven't seen this, and where the Republicans caucus was a room that was kind of put together quickly last session for people to use that could accommodate the seating that was in the pavilion. As pavilions, the auditorium is destroyed.
Yeah.
That's below ground, basically. Well, is it below ground? It's
Pavilion? Yes, it is.
the auditorium.
Yeah, the auditorium is below ground, yes.
So I think of it coming in on this side and then going down.
It's where it's hard to think of like 109, like visually on the outside, especially, you know, on the outside, you're like, well, how would that be impacted, right? But then you're
Oh,
like, well,
that-
because the basement's all under, way
The
lower.
basement and searched for days to figure out how all of these floods, especially 109 and 133, 111, because in past floods, they did not. Other than 109 has, because they have a stair tower on the east side, this side over here. And water has come through that stair tower before into the auditorium and basically flooded the lower section. Never got as deep as this. And I can only trace it back to the toilets and the sinks.
Really?
The what?
The toilets and the sink, because the flood waters all over Montpelier was inundated so much, there was no place for that water to go.
Up through the toilet.
And I was stuck on here, my father's place up the road, and I couldn't get back. So I was here 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, July 11th, and went into 111, one of the buildings I could get into. And the water was bubbling out of the basement water cooler drain. So it was just coming up through there. And then so not finding any large holes, anything like that, that's where a lot of that water was coming in.
And the thing here with this auditorium, it's not just the auditorium. It was in the basement of 109. All the mechanicals for the building were there.
Yeah.
All the
The
mechanicals.
electrical.
All the electrical, the mechanicals, the elevators, because elevators, when they're not in use, go to the bottom floor. So then you can't use them.
Did have a video of that our elevators did well. I did not know, even all the years I've been doing this, is that on a hydraulic elevator, they're actually, the hydraulic tank is open to the atmosphere. That's why when you go in buildings and whatnot, you can sort of have that smell. And so what happened was, once the flood waters came up, the oil in those tanks dissipated and actually the elevator dropped. And we have a video of the lobby at once, and you can actually see them. Elevator dropped down in the flood water, doors open, and that was it.
This is toast. So this building was a long time before it opened back up,
Yes.
but that's still on a 90-day extension.
Yes.
Because all of this is gonna have to get redone at some point.
Right. So on the photo on the right here, we're still in the basement of 109. This is the electrical room. All that. In there was 6'2" water was in there. So this individual here, call him 5'8", 5'10", call him 6 feet, whatever. It was all the electric fans. They were all saturated. So we had crews come in and they opened them all up, cleaned them out best they could.
But that's all gonna have to be.
Replaced, that is correct.
Is that part of the $200 million package?
Yes, it is.
Do you have that money? What is?
No,
That's FEMA.
no, that's all, we're working with FEMA.
We're working our way to get that.
We had Doug Farnham in the other day
That's
talking
right.
about.
Okay.
This here's another, is a mechanical space also in the basement of the pavilion showing air handlers and likes of that, pumps. 111 State Street is the Supreme Court building. And you can see here the floodwaters in 111. Yet again, that was a very interesting building with the doors being closed. Where this photo was taken, behind you was a door. That was a door where I was coming down the stairs and I could see where the water cooler was. And it was about 10 inches on that side. The other side of this door was only about 6 inches of water. Now you go continue down this corridor on the left, and that is where the electrical service comes in. And it drops about 5.5 feet below grade. So all that was full. To the left of this is also the tunnel that goes to 133 State Street. Unfortunately, this photo here on the right-hand side. Oh, it does. About this elevation right here. There's a mark on that wall that somebody put up in the Supreme Court back in the day for the 1927 flood. We were at this elevation right here. In this one. So the dams that were constructed afterwards helped out.
A little bit.
Oh, yes.
Aren't you afraid to walk around with the electric still?
The electric was off.
Definitely.
Sometimes I'm not that scared. Curious.
Don't say that.
Linemen and all.
Very large rubber boots.
And I had rubber boots, 12 boots on, a third set, actually. This here is the basement of 133, the other one that was severely impacted. In this here, you can't see, but it was about almost 7 feet, which is the top of the doorway. So the elevation is right around in here. And so this is the elevator lobby that you're looking at in here. And so all of that, like the doors down there, they're gone. Everything beyond there is gone. And you can see over here now, it was a challenge because of this marble that was up against the wall and the voids we had behind there. So we did gamble, and what we see here is you're seeing the hose off here to the right-hand side and this hole cut up in here. What we're doing is trying to get the airflow to go be down in between the wall and not have to pull all of those marble panels off the wall and try and salvage them and store them. It's worked. We've had no issues. I mean, before anybody went in the building, we've gone through, did all this testing to make sure that, bacteria levels are fine, mold was fine, everything else. In fact, the hygienist that we had was shocked at how clean it was. Serpro did a wonderful job of cleaning up. They had their toothbrushes out, even cleaning metal studs and the likes of that. So they did a great job.
Now, is that marble permeable in those situations, or is it pretty,
I don't know how permeable marble is, but there was a potential that water could get behind it. And so we are trying to dry the plaster behind it. This is looking down the basement in 133. On the left-hand side, there was a room here for Ledge IT, and I think on the right-hand side, it's a single door, and was also some Ledge IT stuff. They had their storage down there. A lot of phones, computers, the likes of that all went.
Is just from trying to orient myself, is that where the police were, like with a little room too, or is that a different floor that the police had a little room? Capitol Police.
They had little rooms all over the
The way you're
place.
looking at me is like, no, so never mind.
Capitol Police had it over in 109, in the link between 109 and 111, in the basement area, or this way over here.
They had a room over there. So
Ledge IT had one. I don't recall having the.
cops did, but never mind. It doesn't matter. I was just trying.
They may have been in there.
Yeah.
I mean, because it was legislature space.
Yeah.
Don't know if they
Doesn't
were
matter.
if they
I'm
were
just trying to
spread in
orient
there.
myself where it was.
There was on the left-hand side, almost all the way down, where it started to get really dark. There was BGS conference room was on that side. So I know there was a Ledge IT training room right before that one, and across the hall there was some here. So they might have been in that room, but
Yes.
Just curious how much Surf Pro costs us. Roughly. Any idea?
over 20 million.
And that's some of the insurance would cover some of that.
Yes.
But also FEMA looks into that as well, I'm thinking, or not. I think they do.
Yes, and we've already been reimbursed
Right.
for what they've done. I mean, if you're gonna believe me this time or not, but that was the last slide.
I still see 6 more.
Do you?
God, you said it. Before you said it so serious, I see six
Loved it.
more.
It's kind of upset for me this morning.
Love that.
That was good, Troy.
I knew that wasn't true, I skipped ahead, but that was funny.
I just wanted the committee, I know this is new for a lot of folks, haven't been in Montpelier for long to know where all the buildings are, but I just wanted folks to have some kind of a visual concept in terms of the damage that was. What it looks like.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into too much depth, which you always this, but we're gonna have to deal with this as a committee at some point. Depending what happens with FEMA when all of our project worksheets get submitted and gets approved, there'll be some decisions that are gonna have to be made at some point. And we'll know more information come March, come April, come May. And then structure something so that off session there can be action taken if needed. So, and I'm thinking it might also be good once the weather gets a little better. Cold and snowy, then maybe we can just take a walk around at some point on some of the buildings. So that people can see what the layout really is. It's hard to see
From
it.
the outside, you don't see it.
You don't see it from the outside. It was just, I mean, we went through the Waterbury thing. Thank goodness you had the Waterbury complex under your belt. We had to deal with this.
I know even more what to do now with FEMA.
Just a history question. When we were kids, did they used to dig the rivers up?
Dredge.
Dredge.
They were, I think back then, yes, in some cases, they were able to get some gravel out of rivers.
Just wondering. Is that preventative at all for the flooding or?
Wasn't Barry.
And then you talk to A and R on that one, you know.
If you remember, just like, because I remember the digging in the springs, I like when we were growing up.
In some areas, I think they were going after the gravel in the rivers, but okay. Talking to A and R, you know, some of that is place for fish habitat and stuff like that. And
Right.
if you are completely clean them out, the water just flows faster and that's not as good.
Yep.
Or work the banks and stuff like that.
Yeah, different issues, not that I'm against it, I'm,
Yeah.
or for it.
No, I just-
But like if one community does it and one downstream does it,
Yeah,
it's there's a whole bunch there, but.
Domino effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
They
Irene,
used to dredge.
and Irene, that was interesting because in the sorry, not Irene, it was Irene. The May before Irene, very flooded. And during Irene, they actually staged excavators at bridges and the choke points to pull the debris out. And Barry really didn't flood that much and others did. So it can move it through.
Yeah.
But that's where I think some of the stuff that, potentially looking at is by lowering fields and the likes of that. So the water does have a place to go, slow down.
Okay. Not to get off topic, but I mean, things of just cleaning up the sides and stuff and the amount of debris that can hook on the
Sometimes
bridge and
John
watch some
Payne.
videos on it with that backs the water up and it can completely, it makes another day.
Yeah, it's not quite the same thing, but I saw on CAX sometime recently that for ice damming here,
So stop talking,
But-
John's here.
Montpelier's using treated effluent. Because of ice damming, which I.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah.
You're welcome.
So that's it for today, folks. You're getting the language.
I have it.
On the.
I tried to print it out, but I don't have
Well,
that.
why don't you send it to, this is what I would do for the language for the correctional industry. That approach is looking at, what I would ask is send that to Phil, and if Phil could send that to all of us in our emails. And
Got
then
it.
overnight, people can take a look at it.
And we're gonna need it.
It's kind of around.
And we'll talk about it less.
I don't, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
That's
Yesterday.
I'm just trying to
Thought we'd say. it.
expedite this as quickly as possible for that.
Yep.
So we're back here tomorrow, be after the floor. We're on the floor at 10.
9:30.
No, we're on the floor at 10.
You
So,
are?
She said
I mean, 9:30. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Like your number better.
No, I don't. I like
We weren't gonna
9:30.
gold star out of that one.
No, I wasn't.
We're all late and like, hey, our chair come today either.
And so we're here after the floor and we're gonna have a walkthrough with John. Our a full day tomorrow. So let's,
Do you want us here before 9:30?
I'm tied up at 9 o'clock.
Same.
That's the problem.
Didn't want to be absent if you were.
Yeah, no, I'm tied up at 9 o'clock. So let's come in after the floor. But if folks could at least look at that language tonight, I'll be in the building probably around 8:30. If you're here, give me the okay, or you got problems with it. So I'd like to let Trevor know as quickly as
Did you read
possible.
it, Sean?
I'm right now sending it to Phil. I mean, I can send it to you.
Have Phil do it because he
Yeah.
can send it to the whole committee.
I read it a little, they changed it a little.
But we'll all know better
We'll
when we
know
look at
better.
it ourselves.
We'll get it.
Right.
So let's go off of YouTube. We're done for today. We're back here.